too wild. Just took my dog. It's really hot and like it's usually really dry in LA, like very, very dry, and it's really humid today. So
does that mean a thunderstorm's coming?
I mean, that would be great. We haven't had rain in like 6 months. We're in the middle of like the worst drought of, I don't know. It's just the whole planet is just like falling apart right now.
I mean, I'm in Scotland and not having rain for 6 months sounds like a parallel universe. I can't quite imagine that.
I know, right? Is it still raining? You get rain all year round, right?
Yeah. I mean, we had a really nice June. It was really sunny, warm, great, but July's been pretty shit. Just kind of pretty dreary. Today was nice, but one of a handful.
Where in Scotland are you?
I'm up in Aberdeen at the moment. Aberdeenshire in the northeast.
Were you from Aberdeen originally or up that way?
Yeah. I came back up when all the lockdowns were kind of kicking off.
When,
made sense.
The thing happened.
But yeah, it feels like this is kind of dragged on a lot longer than
oh my God, doesn't
anticipated, man. Yeah. But what can you do?
And it's just like very unpredictable and it's hard to make plans and I don't know, it's really changed the way you think about the future, doesn't it? Like,
I think in positive ways too, though. I definitely feel like I think about living in the present a lot more than
absolutely.
I did a year ago.
Absolutely. But it's definitely, I've noticed that my brain's changed just in the way that, it does make you really become more present. And you just think, well, we don't know what's going to happen. So you just do what's going on today. We could all be locked back up in the house in a week.
And that's going to be a good mindset for the next 40 years because I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that shit could get a little bit crazy now and again with, global warming and where that's all going.
Definitely. And I mean, we're kind of, I don't know, anticipating another pretty big fire season over here. Like I live northeast LA, like close to the mountains, and we were on evacuation watch for a month with just like, and everything smelled like smoke and there was ash on everything. And we were just a few miles from where there was some pretty big fires and just checking in every day. Like, do we need to evacuate? Or luckily it took them a month to put that fire out.
Wow. It's pretty terrifying stuff.
Yeah. It is.
Do you have like a bag kind of packed to go and stuff then? Are you always a little bit on alert when it comes to this time of the year?
Yeah, we have like a box that's got like hard drives and passports and, birth
childhood teddy bears.
And I not even just like data and just, I think if we had more time, like we'd figure stuff out. But this is just the box of like, okay, if we got to run, like this is the box.
Hank, did Rick Rubin's studio not get burned down a couple years ago with it?
I'm not sure, but that wouldn't surprise me because he's in Malibu and they definitely get it's pretty flammable up there. Yeah, it's all so weird.
It's just all a bit crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, enough about like the weather and global warming and global disasters and
we've got the depressing part out of the way to start with.
Yeah.
I'm pushing forward for a positive podcast.
I can tell you my story about working at Rick Rubin's studio if you want to shift gears.
Yeah, definitely.
I got a call from my publisher. This must have been like 4 or 5 years ago. And they were like, oh, we're doing like a writing camp for Justin Bieber. And at this time I was like, oh, I should do more like top line writing and just try and, write more songs for other people. So I went to this writing camp and it was at Rick Rubin's studio and he had all these different writers in different rooms. And I got to work in this studio it was an old tour bus.
Oh, Dylan's one.
Yeah, it was Bob Dylan's tour bus, yeah.
Yeah.
You know all about it then. And then he was saying that he mixed the Kanye album in that tour bus. I was like, that's amazing. Because it didn't even sound that great in there, but I was like, okay, you can mix it.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does that work acoustically? It'd be a little bit tinny, would it? Or
it was pretty dead, but I don't know. he made it work. It sounded good. But then they ended up scrapping all of that material and they went in a whole different direction with the album.
I guess sometimes you got to do that, don't you?
Yeah.
I was listening to you on Joshua Moriarty's podcast this morning, the bottom of it.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was really good. I like.
Yeah, he's been on here a couple of times, friend of the show. But it was really interesting because it was a part, I think it was kind of towards the end of it in the conversation where you were saying that, I think you were talking a little bit about religion and you said that your conception of him, you know, is very much a small part of who he is as his whole because you'd only had a couple of conversations with him or whatever. How much of a perception of you do you feel that people can get from your music?
I think they can definitely get a perception of, I don't know, depends how well they're listening, depends how closely they're listening. I think there's definitely a lot of like inner world, you know, things that I think about that I put into the music. I don't know, I think people always project things onto other people that they don't know or that they only know through their work or their music. It's an interesting question, but yeah, I have no idea.
I guess because your music is quite a kind of distilled version of yourself to a certain extent.
Yeah, in some ways it's distilled, and in some ways it's more, in some ways there's parts of my music that are more vulnerable or intimate than maybe I even am with people in my life that I'm close to, which is like a weird dichotomy.
Why do you think that is?
I think because music is, it's easy to open up and say things in a way maybe that you wouldn't say in real life because it's kind of disguised with a melody and some electronic drums. I don't know. It feels like a format or a medium that allows you to be a bit more like whimsical and also a bit more coded maybe. You can, like, for instance, I mean, people can listen to songs and have not really any idea what they're truly about until they hear what they're about or until they kind of really dig into the lyrics. Like, for instance, like people will always ask me, like, what is Black and Gold about? And I mean, I've given multiple answers about that question, but I mean, it is like an existential song about looking for meaning in life and searching for God. Is there God? Is there a higher power? Like, what is the universe? If there is a God, like, I want to be a part of that vibe. I bet people aren't thinking about that when they're just like singing along in the car or in the club or whatever. I think they're just like, I don't know.
Kind of hiding in plain sight a little bit.
Yeah, very that.
I was just thinking about, you know, what you were saying there with how you're able to sometimes be a little bit more vulnerable in your music and perhaps more vulnerable than you can be in conversations with people that you're close with. I know you did a lot of like the promo shoots and stuff yourself on the last record too. Does that kind of carry into that side a bit in the aesthetics too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely showing a side of, I don't know, at least how my brain works visually, but a lot of that comes down to just control. I think, yeah, just like being more in control of stuff. I think there was a lot of times in my life when I was younger and even like young adulthood where I felt very out of control in a lot of ways. And I don't know, as I've gotten older and maybe in some good ways and in some bad ways, I think I've gotten a bit more controlling of like my environment and my, you know, what I'm doing and what I'm putting out and being really selective and being just, I don't know, very controlling. I don't know. I'm super controlling. Let me just be really honest.
It's kind of funny then that you live in a place with such crazy, you know, natural weather then, where you're very much out of control of what's going on with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I'm actually pretty good at letting go of control in a lot of ways, which doesn't sound like it makes sense. I'm controlling and then I get to a point where I realize like I actually have no control and I'm like, oh, okay, I can accept that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, would that be the same when you're like working on a record? Do you eventually get to a point where you just feel like you have to let it go?
Yeah, otherwise it never comes out.
It's that idea that it's never finished, only abandoned.
Yeah, that is, yes. I think that's really, really true. It's never finished, only abandoned, or like relinquished. Like it's just, at some point you just have to go, okay, this is done. And that's something I'm trying to do a little differently on this album. Is the last album I did was very, it was like a tribute to pop music of a certain era. It was very shiny and poppy, and I worked really hard on the details, and vocal production was incredibly layered. And I'm starting another album now, and I'm just kind of trying to be a bit more like fast and loose and a bit reckless and a bit more experimental, and just not as not as much of a perfectionist with it.
Are you more in control of different parts of the process then when you're approaching it in that way?
How do you mean?
In terms, well, if we think back to the last one, we could say that what you were very in control of was the production and kind of the style that you were going for with it. Yeah. With this one, because you have that need to kind of control it, do you turn that attention to detail to different parts of the music when it's kind of more fast and loose overall?
I guess maybe this is an exercise in me trying to relinquish some control, but to relinquish control to like the creative forces, the muse, I guess. Like, I don't know. I'm still in the experimental phase, but my mantra is kind of like push, like be more, experiment more. Just, I'm trying to like let go of some of the patterns and the tools and the like production techniques that I have done for a long time, and just like, I don't know, let's see what would happen if I put this vocal through a disgusting sounding amp. Like, I don't know. I'm playing. And I think that's honestly partly because of the lockdown lifestyle and just I don't know. I think a lot of creatives have just...
Is it surprising you so far?
Yeah, it is.
Is there anything that you've learned as a result of that at this point in the kind of... Are you quite early on in the process, or how far into it are you?
Yeah, I'm early. Yeah. I'm early on. I would have... If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said I'm further along than I would tell you I am now.
What happened in that 2 weeks?
I just realized that I'm still in the like research and development phase. Like, I have a lot of kind of sketch ideas written, but I realized that there's a certain type of way that I operate when I'm making a larger album, like an EP or an album. I heard Alexander McQueen talking about how he works when he was designing clothes, and he would kind of travel for a few months and then just like do a lot of busy work, and then he would just kind of purge it all within like a really short period of time and just make everything really quickly before it was supposed to come out. And I think I do something similar to that, where I kind of do a lot of sketches, and I'll have 20 sessions or 20 sessions with like bits of production, and maybe this song has a chorus and maybe that song has a verse or a melody. And also, I recently have been diagnosed with ADHD, so this very much makes sense with that. I kind of just chip away at things, and then at the end, I just like put it all together, kind of like in a manic episode.
Is it almost like how McQueen, would have a lot of different variations on one style with one kind of outfit?
Well, I think he would it was like very much a mood board up until then, like, just kind of doing loose sketches of a mood to try and... I think it's because I like things to feel like a cohesive project. And if they are all done kind of separately, individually, I think maybe they lose a bit of that. But I don't know. That's just for me. Also, I just heard Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis talking about how they made Janet Jackson's Control album in 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, well, that's why it's cohesive. It's because they just sat down and made it all at the same time.
Wait, from start to finish in 6 weeks, like writing the songs in that time too?
Yeah. They said they wrote it and recorded it in 6 weeks.
That's just unfair.
I know. I was like, oh, wow, I feel very sad.
Did you see the McQueen documentary that came out a few years back?
No, I didn't see it. I think I was like, I should watch it. I think I was at a
worth checking out. Yeah.
Yeah, I should see it. I'd gotten to know him in the last like couple of years of his life, and I was really sad when he passed away. And I think I don't know. I was just like, oh, I don't want to watch this yet, but I will watch it at some point.
Yeah, it does get a bit tough towards the end of it. It's very much your kind of standard talking heads documentary, but the subject is so fascinating and it's got such an enigmatic character at the heart of it that it gets away with it.
Yeah, he's amazing. He was like a Scottish legend.
Were you in London at the same time? Were you kind of operating in similar circles?
Yeah, I met him in London. The first time I met him, I was doing a show at Soho House or something in London, which is like a members club there for people that don't know. And it was like, just a kind of like an industry thing. Like people who are members of the club can come to the show or some press and stuff. And the power went out for the whole block. So we didn't do the show, but ended up just kind of like sitting down with Lee with some candles and some food and just like talking, and because he'd come to see the show. And then we rescheduled the show for like a week later, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to come back to the show. I was like, okay, sure. No, and he came back and he showed up with a bunch of people, and he brought Kate Moss to the show. This is such a funny night because Kate Moss ended up like kind of having a laugh with them. She came up on stage. I used to do this cover of Gypsy Woman by Crystal Waters. I used to always do it in my live shows around that time, like for my first album. And she came up on stage at the end and was like dancing. And there was a random like pole in the middle of this stage, and I ended up climbing up it and like sliding down, and actually fractured both of my, like a hairline fractured both of my legs.
Oh,
which I didn't know for like a week that I'd done that.
Did it not hurt?
Yeah, it hurt, but I just thought I'd bruised them. Yeah, wow, that was a whole tangent, but I just thought that was a funny story and a funny evening. Broke my legs in front of Kate Moss.
When you're in a setting like that, how do you is there an energy there that you can feed off of in a members club? It feels like an interesting place to kind of perform a show.
Yeah, it was. I think at that particular time, I was just a lot like looser and like wilder, and I don't know. I think I got sober several years ago and stopped drinking and everything. And I think since then I've become like much more introverted and I get a bit more social anxiety. But I mean, then I was just like, yeah, I was up for it. And
although you're saying you get a little bit more social anxiety now, I imagine it was maybe always there, but the drinking was kind of just a way to
definitely
dampen it.
1,000,000%. Yes.
You're quite into your meditation and stuff now, right?
Yeah.
Does that help to kind of dampen it and control it?
It definitely helps with anxiety. Also, I guess it's hard to know how much social anxiety remains because there's not been a lot of social... Now that things have started to open up here, like the social engagements that I've been to have been pretty limited and it's mostly just people that I know. But it's actually, I think I just don't like being in environments where people are like arrogant and have a chip on their shoulder, and there's like this kind of social hierarchy. It just reminds me of high school, like going to a club where it's like there's like a VIP section, and I don't know. I'd rather just be in an environment where everyone's like chill and like not feeling like they have to project their insecurity onto everybody.
Is that why you moved to LA, a city known for its lack of ego?
I think actually there's this very weird misconception about LA, I think, because people do get this like very myopic view about LA that's based on media and TV and celebrity and stuff. But there's so much more in this city, and there's so many cool people here, and there's so much diversity here, and so many creative people, and there's a whole other side to LA that's really grounded and really down to earth.
Yeah, I guess it's the same as any big city where you can find, or rather, once you find your community, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to find that?
Well, I hated LA when I was there, because I moved here when I was a kid. I moved to Southern California when I was 10, and definitely had a really hard time adjusting. And there was like a big culture shock. And I think it was, maybe that's when my social anxiety kicked in. It was just kind of hard to connect, and kids were mean, and it was like when you're different at that age, everyone just picks on you, and like had a funny accent and stuff, and didn't know what things meant. And so then going to high school, I really just didn't. I was like full on Anglophile. I was like listening to British music and like culture and magazines, and wanted to move to London. So I left LA when I was 17, moved to London. It was like, I'm never going back to LA. My family was still here. But it wasn't until in my 20s that I really kind of fell in love with this city and started to feel really at home here.
Had you changed in any way in the interim, or why do you think it was that you fell in love with it when you returned?
I think because I was able to make my own connection to the city instead of being, part of a family unit where it's like, this is where we live, this is where you go to school, these are our circle of friends. I think coming back to LA as a young adult and getting to kind of explore the city in my own way.
I guess, well, after you've been to London and you've kind of had your success there, are maybe the doors a little bit more open to find the cool people when you return? Oh,
well, I had not had any success at this point. That came later. I moved back to London. At this time, moving back to LA, I'd just been a major flop. Like I'd moved to London to, find success in the music industry and and then just kind of came back to LA like really poor, really hungry, like with my tail between my legs, like, yeah, with kind of nothing to show for it other than being probably like 30 pounds underweight and having a cool haircut.
Did you still believe in yourself at that point, do you think, overall? You still have faith in yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've never I guess I've had like an inner confidence, like a quiet inner confidence. I don't think that maybe sometimes is manifested as arrogance, but I've always known that I'm supposed to make music, and that's what I love doing, and that's what I'm good at doing, and regardless of whatever the reaction or response to that is, like, that's what I'm here to do.
Is that what the drive comes from, or is the drive kind of a separate thing from that, do you think?
That's a good question. I think the drive at that time was like maybe a bit more of like a hunger that was, I don't know, part of like actually needing to earn some money, and also maybe like a bit of a need to like prove myself and find some validation, I think.
The stakes are quite high at that time as well, because it's like you either survive or you don't.
Yeah.
Like there's no in between. You either have to make it or you don't.
Yeah.
Are you able to thrive within that pressure though?
I think at the time, I don't know. There's a lot of, now I'm like well into my 30s. There's a lot of like behavior and things from other people that I just don't put up with anymore. But I think at that time, just being really young and not having boundaries, and also maybe being a little bit desperate, and also just being kind of up for anything, fly by the seat of your pants. I just kind of got swept up in a lot of stuff, and I didn't really kind of mind the hustle and the not sleeping and the just like going here, going there. And yeah. I mean, a lot of it was fun, but a lot of it was like really exhausting and just like weird interactions with adults that were kind of taking advantage of me professionally. And I say adults because I think I don't know, at 24 years old, I didn't feel like an adult.
When did you?
Probably about 3 years ago. I think when I got married, I was like, okay, I am an adult now.
You're married, you've got the dog.
Yeah.
You know how to do your taxes.
Well, I know how to get someone to do my taxes. But yeah, just kind of looked around and was like, oh yeah, now I'm an adult. But I don't know. Growing up, time is really weird. And watching, like, you know, I have a lot of friends. I have friends that are a lot older than me. I have friends that are a lot younger than me. And it's funny just like observing people that are younger and the way that they think that, because when I was 23 and 24 years old, I felt like invincible, and I felt that I would, for some weird reason, always be 23 years old, which is so preposterous and clearly, you know, outside the bounds of time and space. But it's funny just observing that in other people. There's like this cockiness and arrogance in youth that's really admirable and fun and also hilarious, because everyone's they're either going to get old or they're going to die.
I think you've got to be careful too, though, because that feeling's great when you have it, but then you do see some people as they start to age, they start chasing that feeling a little bit more as it begins to slip from their grasp.
Yeah.
Which isn't a good place to be in, I don't think.
No. Why, who you have in mind?
Oh, Kanye West.
Yeah, maybe. And then, but also the thing of like, there's a curiosity in a lot of that kind of mindset that is really creative and really, I think that's what I'm trying to reconnect with on this project that I'm recording now, is just the curiosity and the being, I don't know, more open to trying things.
What did you feel like you were trying to reconnect with Boombox?
I mean, that was definitely me reconnecting with my childhood and who I was at the time, where I really like had a love for pop music and the kind of obsession of that age of like recording songs off the radio and listening to the same tape over and over and over again and memorizing the lyrics and doing a dance routine in the bedroom, and that kind of feeling of fun. And yeah, I think I was just like reconnecting with the fun of music.
There's a certain hope that comes from it, I think, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, I think even if I like my work to be fun. I like to have fun in my life. And I think sometimes if things feel a bit heavy and get the fun sucked out of them, it's hard to be creative. And so even though the project I'm working on now is not necessarily in the spirit of fun, it's like I'm having fun working on it. It's a bit darker too. Like I'm writing a bit material that's a bit darker again.
Can you have fun with music if you're not fully in control of it? Is it harder to have fun with music when you're not fully in control of it? I think, yeah, I mean, there's been times where I've collaborated. I mean, I say I'm really controlling, but I also do love collaborating with people. And there's been a lot of collaborations where I've done work with other people where I haven't had any control over it other than kind of delivering my vocal or doing the top line or whatever, where I've really enjoyed it because I trusted that person, or I really loved what they were bringing to it. Yeah, you know, the person who's in control has got good intentions.
Yeah, and good taste, or just like a similar kind of approach to life or whatever it is. I think when the joy kind of started to get sucked out of it at various times was when it just felt, I don't know, like really forced, or like you have to do this. I've never been good at, I don't know, if someone tells me I have to do something or it has to be a certain way, will definitely try and sabotage.
That's maybe your kind of Aussie roots, because I feel like that's a bit of a Scottish thing as well.
Yeah, you're probably right. And also, like, I don't know, I very like closely identify with my astrological chart. Like I'm very much a Scorpio in that way. Like, don't try and force me to do anything. You'll get stung.
What are the other traits of a Scorpio?
Scorpios, what sign are you?
Aries.
Ah, okay. So, well, actually, there's some pretty big similarities between Aries and Scorpios. Like, Aries is a fire sign. Scorpios is I'm a water sign, but I'm very emotional, very loyal. For the most part, I'm very sensitive, but I like to put up a wall that I'm not sensitive and that I don't have feelings, but I do.
Comes back to hiding in plain sight with the music.
Exactly. And I'm, warm and friendly and generous until you like cross a line with me, and then you don't exist anymore.
I'm kind of a bit like that too. I give people a lot of chances, but once that line's crossed, I don't go back. I'm not great at being too forgiving, I don't think. I need to work on that a little bit.
And that's where the Aries and Scorpio kind of meet up. Like Aries, when you've crossed the line with them, that's it.
That's also because I think I'm quite fair though. Like I give people more chances than they probably deserve, but then once we're past it, no going back.
Yeah.
What else would I be as an Aries then? What are some of the kind of, how deep into it do you go?
I mean, like medium deep. I have friends that are like very, very deep, but I think living in LA, there's a lot of, I don't know, most people in my circle now are pretty into astrology. Aries are very fun, like fun-loving. There's like a competitive spirit where they like to be kind of out front and doing things, trying new things. And Aries are really good at like, starting things. And there's like a kind of a childlike quality with Aries that's really fun.
I do see a bit. It's funny how it lines up.
But then there's all these other, there's all these other planets in the chart that affect the personality as well. Like there's your moon sign, your rising sign, where was Venus when you were born? Like that's a podcast for another time.
I wonder, it's interesting you're saying a lot of people are getting into it. I wonder if it's like as religion slowly dies out a little bit, we maybe start to look back at some of these older kind of forms of things that don't require the same commitment but can still be quite useful tools to kind of orientate ourselves around.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think humans will always look for meaning in life and try and connect with, I think there's just this innate curiosity to figure out life and to know, what is this force that's higher than us, that's like the origin of life. Like I don't know.
You kind of believe in like a higher power?
I do. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely like a force bigger than me. It's not me.
I've often wondered if it could be that I do think there is some truth to it, but I wonder if they could be a force kind of mortal in the same way that we are, just kind of an advanced species of beings that have created us and then are off maybe popping in now and again for a visit to see what's happening.
Like on another plane.
Possibly, yeah. I think if there was going to be a higher power, it wouldn't be a god in the way that we think of it as being this kind of almighty thing, but just another species that is kind of advanced to the point where they can kind of create life. If we look at like AI, if we create artificial intelligence, do we become that in a certain way? Yeah,
and maybe we are the aliens.
What do you mean?
Well, like maybe we came from somewhere else, like thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Who knows?
We're kind of similar like genetics, but if you look at how quickly we advance compared to everything else.
That's true.
It's pretty
maybe we're a hybrid.
Crazy. Yeah. Did you ever see that movie Prometheus?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking of.
Bit of a shit movie, but some interesting stuff going on in it.
Yeah.
Kind of ideas wise.
Yeah. No, I like Prometheus. It was kind of shit, but I definitely watched it a couple of times.
I think it's a movie that's kind of more fun to think about than actually watch.
Yeah. It's a good concept.
I heard you're quite into your VHS tapes.
Yes.
How big's the kind of collection?
It's like a really weird compulsive, I don't know. I probably have about 500 or 600 tapes.
Whoa.
I know. It's weird. It's really
That must take up a lot of space.
I've got them pretty confined to this one like cupboard that's got doors on it, so you don't like walk into the house and see them. It's like now I've hidden them like a dirty little secret. But I do have in my studio, I have like an old CRT TV and a VCR, and I have some in my studio. So if I'm like having a break, I'll just like put something on in the background, which is kind of inspiring, and it's got its own, like I have Moonwalker in there right now.
Are they all kind of that era, like 80s and 90s type stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, mostly 80s and 90s. I have a lot of like sci-fi, and like in here I have Aliens, Predator, Chucky. Then I have like Sinead O'Connor music videos, George Michael, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Did that used to be a thing? Would you buy music videos on tape?
Yeah, I had a few when I was a kid. I definitely had, there was like this Michael Jackson anthology that I had on VHS tape.
Kind of spanning everything through the 80s and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Did that inspire the idea for, what's the video where you're driving around in the car?
Oh, Everything.
Yeah. It feels kind of very, although it's not shot in that VHS style, it's got a very kind of 80s aesthetic to it and kind of feeling about it.
Yeah, there was, and well, probably because that car as well, we rented this like early 90s mini, what was that car? It was just like this weird 90s little beach car that we rented. But yeah, and I think that also that aesthetic and that vibe of like getting the friends in the car and going on a road trip is very like 90s music video.
There's a sort of innocence about it too that I guess ties into going back to that childlike love of music. Yeah,
there was like no, it just, we weren't pretending to be that it was edgy or innovative at all. It was just like, this is something like comforting and cozy about this.
That's when you can have the most fun with it though.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was so fun making that video.
Did you direct that one?
No, my friend Dee Dee directed it. We kind of conceptualized it together, and we worked really closely together on it, and we kind of edited it together. But yeah, mostly everyone involved was a friend. Like my friend Ted choreographed it and styled it, and I mean all the dancers I'd known. I mean a lot of those dancers were like kind of doing a favor on the cheap for me, like, you know, dance for Britney Spears and Janet Jackson and people like that. So it was cool. It's just like, hey, do you want to just come do my little music video? Let's go. And they were up for it. It was really fun.
You've shot other people's music videos and stuff as well, right? Though, or directed and edited and stuff.
I have, yeah, just a couple, just for some friends. But I'm down for anything creative. I kind of love to do it all. And I think that's another way that I become maybe more, I'm going to stop using the word controlling, and I'm going to start saying like hands-on. Cognitive reframing. Yeah. That's, I think, why I'm very like hands-on with what I do, is because I can be creative in whatever it is that I'm doing. And, you know, whether it's like graphic design or shooting photos, I've always wanted to do. And I think as I get older, I don't know, who knows, like I might move into other fields. I've always kind of had like a fantasy of being a film director. Very few people do the same thing forever. Yeah. Like even if people are creative, they tend to stay creative, but you often see people kind of moving into their fields, whether it be writing books or moving from one medium to another. Yeah. Do you have anything in mind when you say you're interested in kind of directing films? A genre or an aesthetic that you'd be interested in? I have started, like I have dabbled in some screenwriting, but nothing that I've ever finished or cemented. Yeah, easy to start, hard to finish. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But then the time that you do finish an idea will probably be a testament to the kind of strength and belief you have in that one. Yeah, and I never try and force things. I think if there's like an instinct to continue working on it, then it's like good to follow through. Because it's the same with music. I mean, there's a graveyard of songs that have... I mean, sometimes I'll find a hard drive and it'll be like, 2012 to 2014. And I'm like, well, what's on this hard drive? And I'll just there's just so many unfinished things on there. And some of them I listen to and I'm like, oh, this actually is cool. Let me drag this onto my new thing and maybe adapt it. And then sometimes I'm like, yeah, this belongs in the graveyard.
The melodies will be timeless though.
Not always.
No?
Sometimes they're not good.
When you say you take it into a new idea, how exactly do you go about transplanting it? Do you have to kind of alter it quite a bit?
Sometimes it's really strange, but sometimes it already kind of ties in with what I'm doing, and sometimes not. But it is a really weird thing, like how some work translates to a different time than when it was created. Like I just pulled some stuff up that I started a number of years ago, and I was like, actually, this is kind of in the world of work that I'm doing now. So maybe it was just like a concept that I'd had that it wasn't ready. I don't know. It's really weird how stuff kind of pops up and feels like it's pertinent to now.
Had you had the desire to go back and make an album in this kind of soundscape for a while then? And it just took a bit of time to come to the fore?
Not consciously. No, not consciously, I don't think. But this album I'm doing more, it's really up-tempo, and I'm drawing some inspiration from actually kind of the first time that I lived in London and was going to a lot of clubs, and there's a bit of, I'm trying to push it more into now, but there's elements of UK garage and house and drum and bass and stuff kind of in that tempo.
That's due for a little bit of a revival. What's like 20-year cycles, things tend to kind of move in.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
Yeah, we're in it. It's definitely the 20-year cycle.
It feels good to be back in a proper decade again, the 20s.
I know.
After the noughties and the teens.
I know, the noughties.
Glad we're kind of back into something that feels okay to say again.
There was something really cringe about the noughties, like saying it, and also the time.
We were speaking about this with Josh actually when he was on last time, and we were both kind of saying like noughties in the 80s can kind of, they feel like in between decades a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely like the noughties were really trashy, which I guess the 80s were too. There was like aesthetically this very like unwashed kind of like, I don't know, all like the mullets and the just like the scrappy, there was, I don't know, maybe that was specific to LA, but I'm sure not.
I don't know. I kind of love trashy stuff though, like trashy entertainment and art. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. It's just, there was this like very pop sheen to the end of the 90s and the early 2000s, and the kind of boy and the girl bands and the like reflective clothing and the shiny like sportswear and the bling. And then following that was just kind of like everyone looked like they hadn't washed their hair for like a couple of weeks.
They probably hadn't.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, the camp of the kind of 90s I quite liked. Like I went back and watched, you've seen Batman Forever, the Val Kilmer one.
Yes, I just rewatched it a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I rewatched it too.
With Uma Thurman and
yeah, Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
No, Uma Thurman's the one after, I think, isn't she?
Oh, yes, you're right. She's the one with Arnold.
I think both of those films have kind of aged all right though, because when they came out, everyone hated them.
Yeah.
But when you look back on them now, you can kind of see he was going for that campy 60s thing.
Yeah.
And they're a lot of fun. Even if they're kind of trash, they're really entertaining.
I enjoyed them. I enjoyed rewatching them. I think that's why I'm blending them together. Wait, who was the villain in the Val Kilmer one? It was Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, and I think Tommy Lee Jones was in it as well, wasn't he?
Yes, as Two-Face.
Coming back to that idea of them being completely over the top, I think all of them had about 3 different villains kicking off at the same time.
Yeah.
Have you got them on VHS?
You know I do. Yeah, I watched them on VHS. It is a really weird, like people are like, but why? Well, specifically my husband is like, why would you watch this on VHS? It looks like shit. But it does, I don't know, there's this like quality that it has. It's kind of like warm and fuzzy to watch. Like it's not super sharp, and there's something for me that I find more engaging about it. And maybe it's the act of like choosing it from a shelf, putting it in the VCR and sitting down to watch it, because I think now it all feels very like you can just kind of scroll through Netflix for 20 minutes and not really find something that you want to watch necessarily. Well, I can.
And then just give up and watch 30 Rock again.
Yeah, and like not really fully watch it. Just kind of watch it in the background and just scroll on my phone. Death scroll.
Do you find you're a lot quicker at picking stuff when you're just going for one on the VHS?
Yeah, because they're all movies that I like, or that I have a bunch of tapes too that are movies that I've always wanted to watch that I haven't. Which is like, do you know? I've never seen Godfather.
I think that's a good thing though, kind of saving that for a little bit later on.
Yeah, and
you don't want to watch everything when you're in your 20s.
Exactly. And I haven't watched it yet because I'm waiting for like that perfect moment. And also it's like over 3 hours long, so you got to have the time. I'll find the perfect moment.
Have you got it on VHS?
Yeah. It's so long that it comes on 2. It's like a double VHS.
Oh, I remember I used to have that with Heat as well, but it was on DVD, but then you had to take the DVD out halfway through and turn it over.
What?
And play it on the other side again, because it's like 3.5 hours.
Is that with Al Pacino?
Yeah, Pacino, De Niro, Val Kilmer again, I think, actually, as well.
I don't remember that movie being that long.
Because I think they only meet like twice in it as well. Pacino and De Niro, they have like 2 scenes together.
That's a good one, though.
Oh, definitely. There's no better feeling than when you're out getting coffee or something, and you have the idea of a movie you want to watch, and then you go home, you pick it off the shelf, and you sit back.
And then sometimes you rewatch stuff that you used to love and you're like, wow, this is terrible. This did not hold up.
Do you ever get that with albums as well?
I think with albums that sometimes I've gone back and listened to albums that I've loved that are from a specific time, and I'm just like, wow, this is mixed really badly. But at the time, no one noticed or cared.
Yeah, back in the 80s, just turn those drums up as high as they can go.
Yeah, and also there was this time, like when things started to switch over to Pro Tools and to digital recordings in the late, like more so in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a lot of, I don't know if Pro Tools hadn't really kind of reached its full potential, and also people didn't maybe know what they were fully doing yet, but there's this kind of sound quality to that era that's really tinny and digital and kind of harsh. Like, okay, this is a pop, like a radio pop song that everybody, I'm sure, has heard 1,000 times involuntarily or voluntarily. But if you go back and listen to Say My Name by Destiny's Child, just go and listen to it and listen to how it's mixed and mastered. It sounds like shit.
I guess when it came out though as well, if that's going out over the radio waves, you're not going to notice it quite as much because the quality coming through speakers wasn't what it's like now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super compressed and yeah, go and listen to it. It's truly a mystery.
I'm intrigued now.
Yeah.
What makes something timeless then? Because when they made that, they wouldn't have thought it was going to sound shit in 20 years. And it was a hit. They probably thought this is one for the ages, but...
I mean, I don't think that it's not timeless just because it sounds like shit. I think there's plenty of things that sound like shit that are that are timeless, maybe.
To an extent.
To an extent. I mean, who knows what makes something timeless? Only time knows.
And even something that you think is timeless 20 years on after it was made, maybe isn't timeless 30 years on after it was made.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea when it comes back to The Godfather, actually, because I wonder, say you watch The Godfather in 20 years, is it going to have the same impact on you that it would have had if you'd watched it when you were 20?
Yeah, I think that when you connect with something when you're younger, it holds more weight.
In terms of like when you listen to it in your kind of formative years and it sticks with you.
Yeah. I think it makes more of an impression in it, and maybe have more attachment to it.
Because you're so fresh as well, though. And you don't have any expectations.
Yeah.
Do you think you take more risks now?
I don't know. I think in some ways I have I don't know. I've been feeling that maybe I'm more confined to knowledge now, which is in a weird. I think a lot of times when I was making music when I was a lot younger, like I didn't know what I was doing, and so I didn't know kind of the rules of production or engineering or songwriting or like certain music theory concepts. So I wasn't so much tied to that. And sometimes I feel that maybe, not that I know everything or anything even close to that, but sometimes I'm like, just do I know too much to be experiment? And that's what I'm trying to do now, is just kind of let go of, kind of unlearn things temporarily and just.
Is that harder than learning them in the first place?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
How do you go about that?
I don't know. I think it's just a conscious letting go and just I don't know, making new choices, being more reckless. Like, this shouldn't work. This isn't right. This isn't the correct way of doing this. But like, let's see what happens. I have this Brian Eno deck of cards. Have you ever heard of this? He made this deck of cards. It's called Oblique Strategies.
Is this the one where it's got like chuck everything out and stuff written down in it?
Yeah, it's things like accentuate the negative, like just weird little strategies, I guess, oblique strategies that I like to pull from this deck and just kind of see what curiosity that sparks.
Do they work, do you think?
They definitely do switch something in the brain that it kind of gets you unstuck sometimes. Like there's one card that I think it says like mute everything. I'm like, okay, let me try that. And then I start muting everything and then gradually unmuting things. And I'm like, oh, I don't need any of these other tracks. Like there's way too much going on.
But then on the last album as well, there's a lot of complexity going on underneath the surface and in the arrangements, but then it comes together quite simply overall and always has a pretty pure message at the core of it.
Yeah, I think there was a harmoniousness through, like everything was there for a reason. It wasn't just there to like fill space and be loud. And that was why that album, the Boombox Eternal, was so fun to make, is because there is a lot of ear candy and a lot of subtle little musical moments that are fun to listen to on headphones and really engaging, which, I mean, that pop music to me was so much that.